everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sleep Paralysis News. This is a brand new podcast where we're speaking to guests about their sleep paralysis experiences. It's a platform where we want to really get the word out and get people talking about their sleep paralysis experiences that they have. We want to kind of shake up any stigma that's attached, get the conversation going about what it is, and really share and support others, because the experience, as we know, can be quite difficult. So I'm Sheila Price Brooks, and I'm joined with my co-host Cyrus. Cyrus is a film director. He's working on his first major movie, which is all about sleep paralysis at the moment. And our guest here today is Lorelei, who's going to share her experiences with us. So without further ado, I'd like to go straight in and speak to you, Lorelei, about your experiences. So can you tell us, are we talking about one or several?
I've had several experiences. The very, I've had experiences since I was a small child too. The very first sleep paralysis I can remember, I was so little, I must have been 3 or 4. And I remember waking up in my bed, seeing everything. It felt like someone had sucked all of the oxygen out of the room as well as some of the gravity. It felt like everything, and there's extreme pressure on my body, and all of my toys and things started to float in the room, and I started to levitate too, and I started to scream for my parents, and I noticed I could not open my mouth. And I woke when I did sort of wake up, my mouth was sealed shut and my cheeks were like this, trying to scream. That was my very first experience as a little baby. And
Okay.
then I've always had very vivid dreams and very vivid nightmares. Um, the first, one of the first scariest experiences, I had a dream I spoke with God when I was 9, and it felt like all my flesh was melting away when that happened. And let's see, I wrote a few things down here. Um, and then at age 12 or 13, I used to wake up. I noticed it about that age that if I slept on my back, I would be more likely to have nightmares or sleep paralysis. At that age, what it felt like, I would wake up and it would feel like someone was pushing the middle of my back, and I would wake up with my body like in a back bend on the bed, and I wouldn't be able to get out of it. It was like somebody was pushing me, and I'm still dreaming, and I can't move, and I'm trying to wake up. I'm like, wake up, this hurts. It was an extreme stretch. And at the time, I thought it was the devil. But um, in my family, I didn't have much spiritual influence. My parents were both atheists and very much just, if you mentioned God around my dad, he would just make a bunch of throat clearing noises and change the subject. So I didn't really have any, like, where is this coming from? And all I was just gathering was just things I'd seen on television and stuff. And I started to do a deeper spiritual delve as I got older and joined a church. And let's see, in my mid 20s, no, early 20s, I think I had the most experiences with the sleep paralysis. In my mid 20s, I had started drinking really heavily, and you know, and it was happening a lot. And I think I was trying to stay up. I was trying to I was trying to avoid sleep a lot of times. That's been sort of a theme with me. I've just sort of, I was trying to stay up all night and thinking maybe, well, I can drink this away. It didn't work. I think it made it worse, honestly.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I would wake up, and a lot of times it would feel like I'm being like electrocuted. I could feel like every nerve in my body was just going bzzz, and it would hurt. And I'd be sitting there, and things around the room would move or levitate, or there'd be like dark shadows that look like they felt so it, how you can feel a shadow is only in a dream, but it felt like it just felt like pure evil.
Yep.
Felt bad. It felt like something that wasn't supposed to be. It felt like alien
Yes.
and foreign. Something that's
Eerie.
almost like it's not yours. It doesn't belong to you, if that makes sense. I'm sort of a science minded person myself. I've got a degree in biology and a minor in chemistry from the University of Memphis. And one of my most interesting classes was neurobiology. And they, for a brief chapter, they introduced the theme of, they said it was a new branch of science, you're probably familiar, called neurotheology. And that was like, I loved that little bit of class. That was the most interesting, favorite class. And they talked about something called the God helmet. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's something by Dr. Michael, I don't know how to say his name, Persinger, maybe? But it was a helmet that he invented. It sends electro somethings through the skull. You could probably look the article up. I'm not very good with words. Um, but it would force people to have induce these spiritual experiences, even people who claim to be atheists through and through, no spiritual anything. They wear this and immediately have a spiritual experience. And they found that a lot of these spiritual experiences are coming through the temporal lobe. So this is exciting because, and for you as a scientist too, because you're with this, we now know where some of our spirituality is coming from in our brain, and a lot of it's going through the temporal lobe. And we saw some of the brain scans with these lit up. There was also there's let's see genetic. There was some study done with genetic DNA that is for it's there's like a I'm not saying this right, but there's a gene that makes you more susceptible to believe in God, and it's called the vascular monoamine transporter 2. And so this
There's the
leads to,
pineal gland as well. The pineal gland has a lot to do with
oh
spirit.
yeah, and what this does is it raises your level of neurotransporters that are in your brain. And a lot of times the way I figure it, I'm a very spiritual person and I'm also very sciencey. And so the way I figure it is that um let's see. I'm getting too excited. Okay, it's it's that I think the reason I have so many spiritual experiences and um bizarre dream phenomenon that happens, I think my brain is just left on. More parts of it are just left on than a normal person. Perhaps that's due to genetics or some trauma in early youth, or it's something in my environment. I'm not sure. Uh, Nobody in my family seems to have reported any dreams. In fact, usually when I talk about my dreams, my family are just like, that's too much. We don't want to hear all that. we, we don't want to hear all that, Lorelai.
So let me I just want to go back a bit. How often are you having these types of experiences now?
Like I said, my in my early 20s, that's when I had the most of them, and it would be like almost every night at certain periods, and sometimes it'd go a week or a month, and then I'd have them usually back to back. It seemed like, and then in my 30s, I stayed really busy and overworked. I went back. That's when I went back to school, and it seemed like and I started to develop a more spiritual life. I joined a church, and it seemed like the experiences really tapered off. All dream experiences. I still had some there was still an occasional experience of two of a night terror where I woke up on my back, but it would be brief. It wasn't like I was trapped in it. It wasn't that overwhelming fear. It happened so quick. I didn't have time for all that. It would be just be very, okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Here recently, and now I'm in my early 40s, I've had some struggles with my church and my church family, and it's affected my spiritual life, and it's affected my dream life as well. I've noticed lately, which is actually how I found you. Um, I had a night terror, I had a night terror, and it was so vivid. And the nightmare included the demons, if you call them that, uh, from my sleep paralysis. They were there and they were hunting me. And they were, in the dream, we were on an airplane. And me and a group of people were being transported to a sort of torture place. And it was so oppressive, and all I could think of was escape and how do I get out of here and possibly even bring help for these other people. And the warden of the place was the demon. It was the main demon. It was the one that sits on your chest and takes your air in the night terror. It's the one that lurks in the room and makes you feel sick inside here. And
So
so I got on the internet, and that's how I found you. I thought, is there any new science right now about this? Because I don't know who to talk to. Nobody else I know experienced these weird things. So I'm glad I found you.
I'm glad too. Um, so have you seen anything? Have you seen that demon before when you're sleeping? Or is it
hmm
just a sense of it being around? And if you've seen it, what does it look like?
Usually the sense comes before the visual. In fact, I want to think my brain comes up with the visual to paint this feeling I've got.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, I've seen it, and it's just dark, and you almost can't look at it. It's just so you see it, and you wanna just turn your head, close your eyes. You just go, ugh, ugh. I never can look at it. It's just so dark and large. And when I was a child, I used to see it as I was trying to fall asleep in my room. It would cover the doorway. I'd leave the door open. I never liked to have it shut because I thought I'd be shut in with it. But it was just like a shadow, and it would cover it up. And I don't know. My mom says you got an imagination. Yeah, that's you're dreaming, you're dreaming. And
Has
who
it ever
knows?
touched you?
Um, not wait, no, yes, yes. When I used to wake up with it in my back, it was it on oh yeah, when I was like 12 or 13. I had another God dream, and okay. I don't know when I'm awake and when I'm asleep for this part. So I'll just kind of guess at it as we go. Okay, so I've gone to sleep for the night. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like thirsty. I gotta go to the bath. I'm gonna get up and do a midnight. I get on my knees and kind of edge towards the edge of the bed, and all of a sudden I see sort of like smoke drifting through the room, and I'm like, what is this? And I'm thinking, oh, I've got stuff in my eyes. I'm rubbing my eyes, and it just makes it worse. There's more smoke. And then I feel myself, I feel like a spirit in the room. And I look at this spirit, and it's well, first it's so bright. It's whiter than white. It's so white that there's rainbows in it. And like real bright snow, if you've ever seen it. In Memphis we don't get too much, but um it and I just felt overwhelmed, and I started to faint or pass out, and I felt all my breath leave me, and I'm like, ooh, and then in the back of my mind, I thought, well, God doesn't, if that's God, if that's an angel, he doesn't hurt his people. He always protects his people. So that can't be. And I'll just trust God to take care of me as I'm falling head first off the bed. And then I feel myself caught by something. And then my whole body slammed into the ceiling. I'm lifted and slammed into the ceiling, and my whole body is just like, ow, ow. And it happens a few times, and then I'm thrown back into the bed. And then that thumb comes up and pushes from my back. And that's where I'm wake up again, paralyzed, still dreaming, and can't get out of this position. I wake up, and it's still sort of, it's not time to get up yet. It's still like, I don't know if I was going to guess, maybe 3 or 4 a.m. I think we had to wake up at 6 back then. So once I wake up, I'm covered in sweat. I'm shaking. I'm paralyzed with fear. I don't even know if I should try to get out of the bed again or and get my mom, if I should just stay in. And I ended up just shaking with fear in my bed, covered up. I was only 12 when that happened.
Oh, these things happen. Do you feel like it's a real experience?
It does feel real.
You
In
wake
fact,
up
I have a hard time just like drawing the line. Am I asleep or am I awake?
Yeah, yeah. And earlier you said that you are quite scientific. And so do you think that it's, and I know you said that you think that your brain is on all the time. That's how you kind of make sense of it. But is it a spiritual engagement, or is it something neurological? What do you think?
I think it's very much both. I think
Yes.
that I'm very studied in biology and I'm very studied in the Bible. And I think we very much need to consider both. We try to, it's difficult to study these two things because they run parallel to each other and they rarely cross. So, how can you study with science something like science is the study of the natural world? Spirituality is the study of the supernatural world, but yet they affect each other. We obviously have correlations for those of us who notice both. And to me, you think about what is life, the big question in biology. Biologists will think that viruses are not quite alive, is what they say, but they're made of amino acids, RNA. Some of them even have DNA, but they're not alive. Could this be because that they don't have the spiritual breath of life in them, but they are just the pieces? I think that for creation to happen, for life, for us to even exist, we've got to have a physical component, our amino acids, our DNA, our RNA, all of our microscopic bits and pieces. We've got to have that. But in order for us to have a conscience, for us to have a spiritual being, for us to even exist here today, the spiritual and the physical had to have touched at some point for us to even have this conversation. That's
Okay.
Charmander.
Okay, so do you think then that perhaps let's talk about the entity that you see that's spiritual, that's a spiritual entity? Is that what you think?
Yes, I do think it's a spiritual entity.
Okay.
And I think it can manifest in a dream because that is something that's non-tangible for us. That's the inner part of our spirit. That's that little DNA gene that lets us have that experience in our temporal lobe. In a way, we make it up, but it's real, just as real as I can feel and have an emotion. It's as real as an emotion is, I would think.
Okay. And when was the last time you had an episode?
Well, that nightmare I had with that same demon, that was only a few nights ago. And this is a repeated one. This has been twice I've had this dream.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to ask Cyrus.
Yeah, just I guess one question last. So, are you going through fear during these experiences? And if you do feel fear, does the nightmare get worse? Does the demon get more power from your fear? Does
Oh,
it grow?
yes. They're absolutely fear driven. This creature is a manifestation of every fear I have in my soul. And it comes up
Mhm.
and looks at me like a reflection, like a negative of a photo. And the bigger, it's like fighting a mirror. The more you fear, the more it grows. The
Yeah.
more you trust and love and care, it shrinks.
Oh yeah. The more you don't fear it, it just grows
Hmm.
off of your fear. So if it realizes
Hmm.
you're not fearful, then it dwindles down. And
Absolutely.
it's
But who
just
can
crazy.
control their emotions? Everyone has fear. Everyone's got to deal with fear. Even as a child, you experience fear for the first time and you have your nightmare. You have your night terrors as a child. It's your brain processing all of that fear. And it's a spiritual experience as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like it's the subconscious mind who you cannot lie to coming alive and letting
Hmm.
like face me and your fears. You've been ignoring them.
Hmm.
So it's crazy, but that was the last question I had.
Okay. And just finally, is there anything that you're doing now to try and stop the kind of the episodes, the dreams and things happening?
Oh, yeah. After studying a little bit of how your neurological system works, your toes are the furthest away from your brain. So if you find yourself having one of these night terrors, a lot of times if you focus wiggling your toes, you'll slowly start to feel them, and the rest of your body will come awake. And it's a good distraction away from the fear if you think about your toes. So it does two things. It does a good psychological distraction, and it physically helps you snap out of it if you want to get out of it, because a lot of times you do, it feels awful.
Okay. Oh, and so that's what you're doing and that's working for you.
It's worked quite well. Hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think that's a great point where we can end the show, end the episode on a positive note there. At least there's a takeaway and something that experiencers can do to help themselves. So to listeners who are having sleep paralysis episodes, focus on your toes. Try and move and wiggle the toe. It's the furthest part of your body from your brain. So try it and see if it works, and I hope it does. Thank
I
you very
hope it helps somebody, and thank you so much. Thank both of you.
Okay,
Thank you so
wonderful.
much.
All right, then you take care, Lorelai.
Y'all too.